Welcome, confidential listeners, to a place where the signals of the living intersect with the silence of the dead. Tonight, we find ourselves in the city of light, Paris, but for some, the lights only reveal the shadows of those who are gone. This is Chloe's archive, a woman who spent 4 years texting a ghost, sending her heart into the digital void, hoping for a touch she knew was impossible. It's a story of a grieving daughter, a lost father, and a stranger who was listening to her soul from the other side of a screen. Titled The Ghost Signal, Echoes from a Dead Line. So, close the door, turn down the lamps, and listen closely, because the audience for this truth is only you. Paris is a city of memories, but for me, it was a city of ghosts. My father, Jean, died 4 years ago, leaving a hole in my life that no amount of wine or art could fill. He was my compass, my anchor. When he left, I stopped breathing with the rest of the world. I kept his phone number in my contacts. I couldn't bring myself to delete it. One night, sitting on my balcony in Montmartre, the silence became too loud. I picked up my phone and typed, "Good night, Papa. I miss you." I hit send, watching the blue bubble float away into the ether. It didn't matter that the message went nowhere. For a second, I felt the warmth of his hand on my shoulder again. It became my ritual. Every morning, every heartbreak, every small victory, I sent it to the ghost signal. I told him about the coffee I burned, the exams I passed, and the terrifying day the doctors told me I had a tumor in my chest. I told him when I fell in love, and when that love shattered like glass on the pavement. I was shouting into a well, never expecting an echo, using my phone as a lifeline to keep from drowning in the sin. The messages became more than just, "I miss you." They became my medical records, my therapy, my life. When the doctors told me the cancer was back, I didn't tell my friends first. I told the blue bubbles. I told Jean about the chemotherapy that made me feel like I was made of lead, and the way the Paris sun felt on my bald head when I finally walked out of the hospital, clean. I told him about the new dog I got, a scruffy terrier that slept on his old rug. I told him he'd be proud of me for choosing him over a fancy breed. I was building a bridge to the afterlife with every character I typed, a digital ladder that I climbed every single night to reach a man who was already dust. I felt like he was listening. I really did. Sometimes after I hit send, I'd swear I could hear his laugh and the rustle of the leaves in the Tuileries garden. But as the 4th anniversary of his death approached, the silence of the phone started to feel heavier than the grief itself. I didn't know that my messages weren't disappearing. They were landing in the hands of a man who was using them to stay alive. The eve of the anniversary is always the hardest. The air in Paris felt thin, like it was running out of oxygen. I sat at my small wooden desk, the same one where Jean used to help me with my homework. I had so much to say. I was graduating. I had found a man, a good man, but the thought of walking down the aisle of a cathedral alone, it was a knife in my gut. I started typing. It was a long message, a confession of all my fears. "Hi, Papa. It's me. Tomorrow is going to be hard again. I'm graduating, and I'm so happy, but you won't be there to see me take the diploma. And, Papa, I think I found him, the one. But how can I say I do when you aren't there to give me away? I'm scared, Papa. I don't think I can do this without you. I hit send. I expected the usual silence, the familiar emptiness of the digital void. But 3 minutes later, my phone vibrated. A notification appeared on the screen. A message from Jean's number. My heart didn't just beat, it tried to stop time itself. My hands shook so hard the phone nearly hit the floor. Who was replying from the grave? I stared at the screen for what felt like an hour. The name on the top was Papa, but the words were from a stranger, a man named Gabriel. Hi, sweetheart. I am not your father, but I have been receiving all your messages for the last 4 years. My name is Gabriel. I lost my daughter in a car accident in August 2014. I wanted to reply for so long, but I didn't want to break your heart. I wanted to let you keep talking to him. I felt the room tilt. The man on the other end of the line wasn't a ghost, but he was a father who had been grieving in the dark just like me. He told me he looked forward to my morning texts. He told me that when I shared my battle with cancer, it gave him the strength to keep living. He was a spectator to my life, a silent guardian who had watched me grow from a broken girl into a woman Jean would have been proud of. Gabriel's words didn't just appear on the screen. They felt like they were being carved into the air around me. I sat on the floor of my apartment, the lights of the Eiffel Tower flickering in the distance like a fading heartbeat. He began to tell me about his life, the life of the man who had been the silent partner in my grief. I've sat in this dark living room for years, Chloe. After I lost my little girl, the silence in this house was a physical weight. I was ready to let go. And then your first message arrived. Good night, Papa. I thought it was a mistake. I almost deleted it. But then another came, and another. You told me about your exams. You told me about the rain. You told me about the cancer. I felt like God had reached down and handed me a thread to keep me from drifting into the abyss. I wasn't just reading texts. I was watching a miracle of resilience. You became the daughter I lost, and I became the shadow of the father you missed. I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the Parisian winter. For 4 years, I thought I was shouting into a void, but the void had a name. It had a heartbeat. I looked at my phone and realized that while I was trying to save my father's memory, I was actually saving a living man's life. Gabriel told me about the dog, how he laughed for the first time in years when I told Papa I had bought a scruffy terrier. He was my witness, my unintended guardian. The shock of Gabriel's existence started to settle into something deeper. A strange, jagged comfort. But with that comfort came a wave of vulnerability that made my skin crawl. Every secret I had whispered to the ghost of Jean was now sitting in the pocket of a stranger. He knew about my scars. He knew about the nights I wanted to give up. He knew about the man I loved and the father I lacked. I walked through the Latin Quarter, the cobblestones slick with a light drizzle. I felt exposed, like I was walking naked through the streets of Paris. I wondered if I should be angry. Had he violated my sanctuary? But then I remembered the tone of his message. It wasn't the voice of a predator. It was the voice of a man who had been shattered and found a way to glue the pieces back together using my words. He was the architect of my survival, and I was the architect of his. I know you're scared, Chloe. I know I'm a stranger, but I want you to know one thing. Your father, Jean, he would have been the proudest man in all of France. I saw you face death in that hospital and come out smiling. I saw you find love again after being broken. You are extraordinary. And tomorrow, when you walk toward that altar or that stage, you won't be alone. He's there in the wind, and I'm here, holding the phone, cheering for you from the shadows." The morning of the 4th anniversary arrived. Usually, this day was a black hole that swallowed me whole. I would spend it at the cemetery, talking to a headstone that never talked back. But this time, as I stood before Jean's grave and Père Lachaise, the air felt different. The cemetery wasn't just a place of death. It felt like a station where signals finally crossed. I pulled out my phone one last time. My fingers didn't shake. I felt a strange, steady peace, the kind of peace you only find after a long war. "Goodbye, Papa. I'm okay now. I found someone to watch over the messages. I'm ready to let you rest." I didn't wait for a blue bubble this time. I looked up at the gray Paris sky and felt the weight of 4 years drop from my shoulders. I realized that the ghost signal wasn't meant to bring my father back to life. It was meant to bring me back to mine. Gabriel had given me the final gift my father couldn't, the permission to stop being a daughter of the dead and start being a woman of the living. I walked out of those iron gates and into the light of a Paris morning that finally felt like it belonged to me. For 4 years, my first movement every morning was a reflex of pain. I would reach for my phone before my eyes were even fully open, sending a greeting into the void just to justify my own existence. But the morning after Gabriel's revelation, the air in my bedroom felt different. The dust motes dancing in the sunlight didn't look like ghosts anymore. They looked like possibilities. I picked up the phone, I opened the thread, I saw the name Papa at the top, but for the first time, I saw the man behind the screen. I typed a message, but the words had changed. "Good morning, Gabriel. I hope you slept well. Thank you for being there when I thought no one was. I'm going for a walk by the Seine today. I think I'll buy some flowers. Not for a grave, but for my table." Hitting send didn't feel like a desperate plea this time. It felt like a handshake. Gabriel replied almost instantly, telling me about the coffee he was brewing and the way the light was hitting his own window in another part of the city. We were two survivors of different shipwrecks, finding a common language in the wreckage. I realized that the ghost signal hadn't died. It had simply evolved from a monologue of grief into a dialogue of hope. We decided not to meet. At least, not yet. There was something sacred about the distance, something pure about being two voices in the Parisian night. We moved our conversation to a new thread, leaving the one with Papa as a museum, a record of a girl who refused to let go until she was caught by a stranger. I spent the afternoon at the Pont Neuf, watching the green water of the Seine flow toward the horizon. I thought about Gabriel's daughter. I thought about how she and I were linked by a phone number and a tragic twist of fate. You asked me once if I felt like I was invading your life, Chloe. The truth is, you were invading my death. I was ready to close the book, to let the silence win. But every time my phone buzzed with your updates, it was like a heart monitor for my own soul. You taught me that life continues, even when the people we love don't. You showed me that a daughter's love is a force of nature that can reach through the static and find a father, even if he isn't her own. I looked at the locks on the bridge, thousands of names etched in metal, all promising forever. I realized that forever isn't about the people who stay, it's about the love that survives their departure. Gabriel wasn't my father, and I wasn't his daughter, But in the architecture of the universe, we were exactly what the other needed to survive the night. It has been months since that first reply. I graduated. I walked across that stage in Paris with my head held high, knowing that while Jean wasn't in the front row, his witness was reading my text about it 10 minutes later. I'm planning my wedding now. I'll be walking down the aisle alone, but I won't be lonely. The dog, the one Gabriel told me my father would be proud of, is sleeping at my feet as I write this final entry. I still keep the old phone. I still look at the messages sometimes, not to hurt myself, but to remember the girl I used to be. I used to think that a signal needed two ends to be real. I thought that because Jean couldn't answer, my words were lost. I was wrong. Every word we speak into the world, every act of love, every cry for help, it goes somewhere. It lands. Sometimes it lands in the heart of a stranger who is just as lost as you are. My father didn't answer my texts, but he gave me Gabriel, and Gabriel gave me back my life. Paris is still a city of ghosts, but now I know how to dance with them. The signal is clear, the connection is made, and for the first time in 4 years, I am finally at peace. And so the archive of the ghost signal is closed. A story of a daughter who texted the dead and found the living. Chloe and Gabriel remain connected by the pixels and the pain that saved them both. If this journey through the neon shadows of Paris has touched your heart, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel. Help us continue to unbox these digital miracles from the secrets inbox. Click the bell icon so you're always there when the next signal breaks the silence. But I have to ask you, confidential listeners, would you have the courage to reply to a stranger's grief, or would you stay silent in the dark? Share your truth in the comments below. Because in a world full of noise, sometimes the most important signal is the one we never expected to receive. Until next time, stay safe and keep your secrets close. Good night.